Hello everyone, welcome to our session on the 8 limbs of yoga, another of our Ayurveda tips for busy people, for the Ayurveda Partners program and website. I'm Paul Moorhead, Director of the MS in Maharishi Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine at Maharishi International University, and this knowledge comes from Maharishi, of course, from Maharishi's course on Maharishi Yoga, first course on yoga exercise. And this is published Maharishi Vedic University 2006. So the 8 limbs of yoga from Maharishi Patanjali. Maharishi Patanjali cognized the Yoga Sutras, very famous Vedic texts on the whole system of yoga. And as we've seen, yoga is not just postures. Yoga means unified state of consciousness. Yoga is the transcending of the activity of the mind. The second Yoga Sutra tells us, Yogas Chitta Vriddhi Nirodha. Yoga is the transcending of the activity of the mind. But there are 8 limbs of yoga that Maharishi Patanjali laid out in his Yoga Sutras. And this is a picture from the Maharishi Yoga First Course on Yoga Exercise course, chart 7.3, the 8 limbs of yoga. So they are yama, the observances, the 5 observances. Niyama, the 5 rules of life. Asana is posture. Pranayama is regulation of breathing. Pratyahara is differentiating, coming out of the field of the sense objects. And dharana is steadiness of the mind. Dhyana is meditation or flow of the mind inward. And samadhi is transcendental consciousness. So I'll elaborate each of these in more detail. So first, yama, the 5 observances. This is the entire field of creation outside the individual, the cosmic life, but constantly influenced by the individual thought and action. So obviously a very important field of life, how we relate to the universe, how it impacts us, how we impact it. So that's the first limb of yoga, the cosmos, the observances, and we'll go through those 5 in a little bit. The 5 rules, or niyama, have to do with the physical structure of the body and nervous system. So they're the 5 rules of life, including purity and other things. We'll go into those in just a minute. So cosmic value of behavior, individual physiology and behavior. Number 3 is asana, seat or posture. And this is the different limbs of the body working with the physiology, the sphere of posture, to culture the state of yoga. Culture the physiology so that it can experience and sustain the state of pure consciousness, the state of yoga. And pranayama, regulation of breathing, the sphere of individual breath and breathing exercise. And breath connects physiology with consciousness. Prana is reverberating consciousness. So pranayama regulates that field. We'll go into that a little bit more. And 5 is pratyahara, retirement of the senses from their objects. We're always engaged in sensory perception, but retiring from sensory objects. That's a sphere of life that lies between the senses and their objects. So subjectivity to objectivity, this field of the sphere of the senses. And coming out of the field, ahara means food, and pratyahara means retiring from nourishing or feeding the senses through sensory perception. But Maharishi also comments that it's gaining more nourishment from within. So the mind turns within. Close our eyes, begin to meditate, and the mind turns within and finds increasing charm at every level. So there's increasing nourishment from within. Dharana is steadiness of the mind, the sphere of life that lies between the senses and the mind. So coming out of the field of the senses then, and coming out to the level of gross thinking activity, we start our mantra and meditation, and finer level of thinking, and the mind becomes steady, just naturally. Close the eyes, begin the practice, mind becomes more steady. And dhyana is defined as meditation, or sometimes flow of the mind, in the direction of the transcendent, from the surface conscious thinking level to finer levels of thought, that flow of the mind, that lies between the mind and being. That's the field of dhyana. And then samadhi, the eighth limb, is transcendental consciousness, the state of absolute being, the state of transcendental consciousness, samadhi. Sama means even, and di means intellect. So the intellect gets established at the doorstep of the transcendent. Transcendent is beyond thought, beyond intellect, but then in that process, the intellect becomes steady, stabilized in pure consciousness. So those are the 8 limbs, going from the cosmic to the level of senses, mind, finer levels of mind, and to the finest level, the transcendent. The whole range of creation, the whole range of life. 8 limbs of yoga. So now the first 5 observances, the 5 yamas, we'll look at them a little bit more in detail. They are satya, ahimsa, asteya, brahmachari, and aparigraha. Satya means truthfulness. So established in truthfulness comes mastery over action and achievement. So let's understand this. The field of truth, Sat Chitananda, is pure, unbounded consciousness. Truth, Maharishi defines as that which never changes. Never changes. And what is that? That has to be some eternal field that's always pure. And so that Satya is pure consciousness, the ocean of consciousness, unified field of all the laws of nature, which we effortlessly contact in our transcendental meditation. So established in that, in truthfulness, the field which never changes, that unbounded awareness, then mastery over action and achievement. And action depends on thinking and on consciousness. Thinking depends on consciousness, state of consciousness. So it's consciousness or being, then thinking, then action, and then achievement and fulfillment. So all that depends on consciousness. And so if we're established in truthfulness, pure consciousness, then tremendous increase of power of thought and breadth of awareness, and then great skill in action and achievement. The Gita says, Yogastha Kuru Karmani, in chapter 2. Established in being, perform action. So Satya. Ahimsa is non-violence. Established in non-violence, enmity in the environment is neutralized. Ahimsa. So non-violence means we don't hold even the thought or even the feeling on any level of enmity or anger or rejection. Non-violence. And where is the field of nonviolence? In the field of peace, in the field of fulfillment. And that again is the field of pure transcendental consciousness, pure bliss consciousness, unbounded awareness. And so one gains that level and one becomes naturally much more peaceful, and one radiates that influence of coherence and peace and harmony all around them. And people around them feel more harmonious and more peaceful. And so one established in that wholeness of life, that evenness, that field of peace, then they naturally and very powerfully create an influence of coherence and harmony in the environment. And we have now over 55 studies that have demonstrated when groups, a sufficiently large group of people, practice either transcendental meditation or a much smaller group of the TM City program, that violence and crime significantly decreases every time in the environment, whether it's a city, the state, a nation, or even in the whole world. In our Taste of Utopia Assembly of 1983 at MIU, violence calmed down globally during a time when we had the square root of 1% of the world's population practicing the TM and TM City program. Number 3, asteya, non-covetousness. To covet is to desire strongly, like a craving. And Maharishi defines it as also desiring that which does not belong to you, or kind of like stealing. And asteya, established in non-covetousness, all precious things present themselves. Very interesting. So how does that work? Well, Maharishi explains, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, that we settle down, consciousness expands, and one feels deep peace, deep silence, and great fulfillment. Fulfillment of all desires. One forgets everything. And we're just in that wholeness of awareness. Complete fulfillment, complete stability, complete satisfaction. So that's the field of non-covetous. And we don't desire anything because we're at the home of all home of all knowledge, the home of all the laws of nature, complete fulfillment, samadhi. And so established in that field of non-covetousness, then, interestingly, all precious things present themselves. Well, what's precious? Well, life, health, bliss, inner happiness, inner fulfillment, inner affluence, but also outer affluence because we're thinking and acting in accord with all the laws of nature, and so we gain more support of nature. So there's more and more spontaneous fulfillment of desire with less effort. Or she says, do less and accomplish more. And also, as consciousness grows towards unity consciousness, then nature is doing everything, and we're that pure consciousness, and nature is providing everything, doing everything. It's going on by itself. We're witnessing activity. That's in cosmic consciousness. In unity consciousness, everything is as dear as myself. Everything is seen to be at its heart, at its root, and even on its surface. Everything is seen to be the reverberations of consciousness, that ocean of consciousness in motion. And therefore as dear as my own self, because since cosmic consciousness, the self, my own self, what I identify with, is that ocean of pure consciousness. So then there's no possibility of any desire or covetousness that overtakes the mind, overshadows the mind. Number 4, brahmachari, pure lifestyle. Rashi says it's living Brahman consciousness, living unity consciousness is brahmachari. And established in pure lifestyle, one gains great vitality, great brilliance. So, living that pure consciousness more and more, what happens is, established in that pure lifestyle, that pure awareness, living Brahman consciousness, unity consciousness is what that means ultimately. Tremendous vitality. Maharishi says that action in unity consciousness, where everything is as dear to myself, everything is seen as myself, in terms of myself, then even thought, speech, action, it doesn't require energy. It actually increases energy because you're just moving, wholeness moving within itself, moving within myself. So tremendous vitality. Maharishi would work 20 hours a day, just every day for 50 years. It was remarkable. Tremendous energy, vitality, and brilliance, just that glowing health, that ojas, that brilliant field of perfect health and balance. So brahmachari. And also, particularly, it is related to living a pure lifestyle. One devoted partner like that, in terms of a householder. In terms of people who are naturally celibate, recluse field of life, it's a natural state of life, a natural pattern of life. For them, of course, it's very natural, that brahmachari state of life. Now 5, aparigraha, non-accumulation. Not accumulating things. And established in non-accumulation, one gains knowledge of past, present, and future. So expanded awareness, interesting. So non-accumulation, what can we accumulate? Well, one can accumulate stress, which restricts that pure awareness, restricts our awareness, makes it very narrow. And one may become attached to things and try and get fulfillment from objects of the senses, accumulating this and that, various material possessions. And that can weigh one down. You think in the West, we have these storage sheds where people accumulate their things. And that's one kind of accumulation, is material things, but also accumulate of deep impressions, of stresses, which restrict the awareness. So establish a non-accumulation where one is not accumulating stresses due to activity because one is acting in harmony with natural law. Activity doesn't accumulate stress and strain in the physiology. And also, as we've seen, one becomes more satisfied inside. One doesn't desire so much material possessions necessarily, that non-covetousness. Then established in that, then one's awareness expands. Because physiology is functioning normally, psychology, emotions are balanced, and that pure consciousness awareness expands. And that ocean of pure consciousness is where the home of all knowledge can be gained from there. So that's where the knowledge of past, present, and future can come. So now let's go to the 5 rules of life, the niyamas. 5 rules of life. This is the area of individual thought and behavior and physiology. So Shauch is purity of life. So from purity there arises indifference towards the body and towards physical contact with others. Now note the word indifference. It doesn't say repulsion or rejection or anything like that, or in any negative connotation. It's just one becomes self-sufficient. And one doesn't covet or depend on that. The physiology, so much focus on the physiology, not too much focus on physical contact with others. One is just even, stable, content. Moreover, one achieves purification of the heart, cheerfulness, one-pointedness, very focused awareness, natural control of the senses, and ability to see the self. From purity, all these beautiful things come. So happiness, cheerfulness, purification of the emotions, the heart, one-pointed focused awareness, control of the senses. One isn't pulled out by the senses, pulled this way and that way, and in many different ways. One just is balanced senses. Senses are most nourishing, most clear, but not overshadowing, not creating desire, greed, or attachment. And ultimately, ability to see the self, beautiful. Purity of mind, purity of heart. Then one sees that pure consciousness very clearly. Next is santosha, contentment. From contentment, supreme happiness. In this state, established in contentment, where is contentment? That fullness of consciousness, that unbounded bliss. So one is completely content. And that is the field of supreme happiness, because sensory objects bring some happiness, but Maharishi said it's like a faint wave of joyfulness compared to that unbounded bliss of pure consciousness. So supreme happiness is when one is established in that bliss consciousness. Sat Chit Ananda, pure bliss consciousness, eternal bliss consciousness. 3 tapas, austerity. From austerity comes destruction of impurities, giving rise to perfection of the body and senses. Beautiful. So austerity, tapas, one can think of austerity as living a simple life, not being so engaged in sensory perception and the joys of the senses. That is true. But Maharishi says, really, one doesn't have to do a lot of austerities on the surface of life. The real austerity comes from diving into pure consciousness, which is maximum bliss, maximum contentment. That's the supreme austerity. One forgets everything in the world and just enjoys that ocean of consciousness, that ocean of bliss. So that's the real austerity. So from that repeated diving into meditation, all these impurities naturally dissolve day by day. The stresses dissolve as we meditate regularly. And ultimately giving rise to perfection of the body and senses. And swadhyaya, study of the self. From study of the self, realization of one's presiding intelligence. Study of the self. Well, that's on several levels. In Ayurveda we know our mind-body type. That's one kind of study of the self. Another study of the self is studying that field of pure consciousness, which we're doing right now. Studying consciousness itself, studying the self, capital S self, samadhi, pure consciousness, the self of everyone. Atma, it said. Sanskrit term for self is Atma, capital A, Atma. Atma is pure consciousness, pure, the essence of one's awareness, pure unbounded awareness, the source of the source of thought. We locate it at the source of thought. So that's real study of the self, understanding and experience of consciousness. That is study of the self. And of course, studying the Yoga Sutras is the same, and studying yoga is the same. So once established in that, realization of one's presiding intelligence. And what is presiding intelligence? The inner intelligence of the body, that intelligence of consciousness, the field of consciousness again, which supports and balances all the aspects of functioning of the physiology. Every one of the 100 trillion cells continuously, 1 million chemical reactions every second in every cell. What's governing all that? This ocean of consciousness, the inner intelligence of the body, is governing all that. So that's the presiding intelligence, cosmic intelligence. Individual intelligence becoming cosmic intelligence. That's what yoga, the predicted result of yoga, can provide. And 5, Ishvara Pranidhan, worship of God. From worship of God comes perfection of samadhi, pure consciousness. So naturally, as consciousness grows, senses become more clear, stresses go, awareness expands, appreciation grows. And as appreciation grows, love grows. Love is just highest level of appreciation. And we begin to appreciate everything more and more. And in cosmic consciousness, we are established in pure unbounded awareness. And then the relative, it's seen as separate. The self is separate from the field of activity. And the relative is going on by itself, as if by itself, conducted by the laws of nature. But that separation is not the final step. We have pure consciousness inside, but as consciousness continues to grow, we continue to transcend. Senses become more refined, and we begin to perceive everything in creation in finer values, and ultimately the finest relative, the celestial level, celestial perception. We see the laws of nature active, everything, great beautiful beauty, great beauty in everything. And with that great appreciation, the heart swells, devotion grows, and one appreciates the divine intelligence at the basis of everything. And so naturally, devotion grows, Maharishi explains, and that devotion gives rise to God consciousness, where we permanently are established in that field of celestial perception, pure consciousness inside, celestial perception outside. But anyway, as we appreciate, through our tradition, appreciate the divine intelligence at the basis of everything, that growing appreciation helps to accelerate, to purify mind, body, and especially emotions, and that helps to perfect or enhance that experience of pure consciousness, samadhi, perfecting. And perfecting means established there. Perfecting means you not only dip into pure consciousness, but you stay there permanently. That pure consciousness becomes perfectly established. Okay, so now we're going to talk about asana a little bit more. All these fields of life naturally grow with our transcendental meditation. Because we just meditate, we close the eyes, and so naturally we're behaving more in tune with natural law, and pratyahara is coming out of the field of the senses, and we're sitting comfortably, that's part of asana, and our breath naturally refines as we meditate, as the mind settles down, body settles down, breath becomes refined, so that's pranayama. And of course, dharana is steadiness of the mind, dhyana is flow of the mind or meditation, and coming to samadhi. So all 8 limbs spontaneously are taken care of through transcendental meditation. But Maharishi added asanas and the pranayama to accelerate, practicing more of the limbs daily. So Maharishi recommends time spent on asanas is a golden time of the day. So we practice the asanas easily, effortlessly, comfortably, and naturally without strain or force. So this is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. It's very important. Perform the asana only as far as comfortable, and hold the pose only as long as comfortable. That's very important. What's comfortable for our physiology at that time. And particularly by individuals who are weak or unaccustomed to physical exercise. Very important to be easy with these asanas. Here's some more asanas, a couple more with their benefits. Seat pose Vajra asana strengthens the knees, thighs, and muscles of the buttocks. Helps Vata joint disorders, especially of the knees. It's sitting between the heels, sitting between the knees, as we see here. Also strengthens digestion. That's being settled and stable in Vajrasana. Settles the physiology and enhances digestion. Also said to give firmness to the body. Vajrasana, seat pose. And head to knee asana is Janushir asana. Benefits. So one leg is in front, we bend the other knee, and we slide forward, and head to knee. Strengthens the large intestine and improves digestion because that forward bend massages the abdominal organs, the digestive organs. Strengthens the prostate and helps prevent prostate enlargement. So this is very good. Improves flexibility of thigh, calf, abdomen, arm, shoulder, and back muscles. So these are all the areas that are getting naturally stretched in Janushir, as we see here. And increases flexibility and strengthens the spine. Of course, that forward bend and stretching the spine. And also enhances immunity, enhances digestion, and it balances, all the asanas balance all 3 doshas, so they all enhance immunity. But this one particularly, because enhancing digestion and strengthening the central nervous system and the spine. It's good for enhancing immunity. Okay, so our health tip. We suggest practicing Maharishi Yoga asanas once or twice a day. Twice a day is ideal, before our transcendental meditation. And you can learn them at miu.edu/asanas, or coming to our weekly class of Maharishi Yoga asanas. We've had for coming up on 5 years now. On Friday afternoons at 4 and Sunday mornings at 10 Central Time. And then might be good to record your experiences in your journal as you do the asanas regularly. See if you notice any increasing energy, flexibility, smoothness in the physiology. Also recommend reading Maharishi's translation and commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Old copy here, but you can get it at MIU Press. And tremendous text on yoga and consciousness. All of the pocket edition, Maharishi said, of total knowledge is the Gita. So that would really enhance your understanding, the study of yourself, and your experience, understanding experience of all aspects of yoga. So that's a recommendation. And we'll close with a quote by Maharishi about yoga. Maharishi says, "Transcending amounts to the dawn of unboundedness." And what does that mean? It's not that the duality will disappear. Duality means self and non-self, or all this diversity. Won't disappear, only that it will cease to attack unity, cease to prevail over unity in that state of yoga, against yoga's transcendence. The state of yoga produces a situation where duality is not a barrier to the eternal continuum of unity. The enemy cannot raise a finger. Not that the enemy will disappear, rather he will be a disabled enemy. So getting established in that state of yoga, pure awareness, in higher states of consciousness, then the duality, the diversity through the senses and mind and intellect and all of this activity, it doesn't challenge unity. Unity becomes permanently established in higher states of consciousness. So the enemy can't raise a finger. It's disabled. We don't destroy or come out of the field of diversity except during meditation. It's still there, and we can enjoy it even more. But it doesn't overshadow ourself. And we no longer live in ignorance, but in enlightenment. So enjoy Maharishi Yoga, and thank you.